I knew you when, Jared. Now you're a big important guy. How did we get you on the show?
We go way back, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I just really enjoyed your introduction. You just took us through about 1/3 of Bidenomics in about 45 seconds, so thank you for that.
Well, let's talk about where we are in this moment. We've got inflation, at least in this part of the world, coming down a little bit. It's still persistently high in some places, including in Europe. There does seem to be a technical recession in some parts of Europe. We've got remarkably low unemployment. We've got wages continuing to increase. Where are we right now in this economy?
Well, I think what you just described is an important place to start, which is this kind of virtuous cycle of a tight labor market generating employment generating wage growth, and that helping to fuel consumer spending. I noticed you mentioned retail sales from this week. That came in well ahead of expectations. And look, consumer spending in this country is close to 70% of GDP. In Europe, it's more like 55%. So if the American consumer has a strong labor market behind her, that virtuous cycle, that flywheel of GDP growth is going to deliver. Now, you mentioned inflation, which has, of course, been elevated. It actually is growing considerably less quickly here than in Europe at this point, but probably more importantly, it's down about 5 points from its peak, so it's slowed down a great deal here. So now we're actually seeing some real wage gains, wages outpacing inflation, and that helps that virtuous cycle move along as well.
Let's have a small and very accessible economics discussion right now. Obviously, if wage gains outpace inflation, people are doing okay, right? Because you're not losing money. But the Fed has a target for inflation, a target that a lot of people think is unusually low, that much of the world has gone to a slightly higher target. We should be okay with inflation that's a little higher than what the Fed wants it to be, but you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. We're at 4% and change inflation right now, year over year. Where should we be, and what should the American worker think of as success? That I get 4% raise and inflation is 3%?
Yeah, I think there are two ways to think about that. First of all, some of the prices that went way up are coming down, and that's actually deflation. That's actually prices going back to a level they were before. And of course, the classical example right now is eggs, because that's something people really noticed when they went up. Used cars went up a lot. They've come down a while. Last couple of months, they've ticked the other way. So part one is housing prices, same thing. Part one are prices that went up really high. We're seeing some deflation there, some actual price declines. More broadly, what we're seeing is inflation slowing, and we expect that to keep slowing. So housing prices should come in a little softer in the second half of the year, helping to unsnarl the supply chains. That was a really important priority of President Biden starting when he got into office, and that's helped to push down on goods inflation. We just saw some great work by Acting Secretary Julie Su out in the ports. That's really important in terms of keeping the supply chains unsnarled. That's also going to help. The main thing is where you landed, which is we like to see wages outpacing inflation. That's actually been the case on a monthly basis for the last 6 or 7 months, and that's helped to fuel consumer spending, and that's helped to keep this economy moving in such a resilient fashion. But what we saw in the last inflation report was a year-over-year gain, a slight gain, 0.2% of wages over inflation. So if you put all those dynamics together, prices had spiked, come down. Disinflation, that means inflation growing more slowly month after month. We've had that for 11 months in a row. We want to keep that going. And nominal wages beating inflation, that is real wage gains. I think that's the recipe for going forward.
When you and I first started talking, you were an advisor to the then Vice President, Joe Biden, so it makes a lot of sense that you are where you are now. But one of the things that you and he have shared is what I started the show with, that you are both supporters of unionization. Piece of news crossed today that isn't all that surprising, but is cause for a little bit of concern. The Teamsters have authorized a strike at UPS on August 1st if they do not get what they are negotiating for. Now, UPS and the Teamsters have both suggested that they are moving toward an agreement. It is hard to overstate how serious a Teamsters strike at UPS would be for an economy that is what you just described. Tell me what you're thinking about this.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to get into any specific cases like that because we've seen time and again that the best thing we can do is encourage both sides to come to an agreement. You saw that happen. Many cases, Labor Secretary Walsh helped in various conflicts like that. And I just mentioned Acting Secretary Julie Su doing really fantastic work out there on the West Coast ports. I mean, just exactly in the spirit of what you're talking about, keeping our supply chains going. In this particular case, it's still early days. We know that both sides are going to be talking to each other. That's a company that has a good history of working with its unions. So I think we should stay optimistic about that and watch what happens. I think the thing that really matters most here is that we have a president who, as you said in your introduction, is one of the most understanding presidents. Yes, pro-union. We can talk about that all day. But what does that really mean in economic terms? What it means that this is a president who believes that if you're a working person, if you're contributing to helping to bake the economic pie, you ought to get a fair slice. That's a really simple and I think a really compelling way to understand where President Biden is coming from. And unions are really an important part of that of that dynamic.
So without you commenting specifically, would it be fair to say that if we get to a point where this is in danger, Julie Su or whomever it is or the government is likely going to get involved, where there's going to be some role to avoid one of the biggest strikes that we could see in this country?
It would be less than helpful for me to speculate. What I will say is that when we've had situations, whether it was the railroads or the ports, anything to do with our supply chains, we've shown how much we value resilient supply chains and management and unions working together to make sure we can deliver on behalf of American consumers. No reason we wouldn't keep doing the same.